Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. We're making this video today to talk about verbal agreements or oral agreements, and I started thinking about this from a piece of correspondence I received from a viewer, quoting directly, "Hi Ben, longtime viewer of your YouTube channel. Do Thai courts typically enforce verbal agreements like U.S. courts sometimes do, or must things be in writing to have merit in Thai courts? I have seen you discuss many times the difference between Thai law and U.S. common law. I think these concepts are fascinating, and I think your audience might as well." Okay, couple of things. You know, when lay folks start talking about things like verbal agreements, it kind of makes me cringe. And it's not out of any kind of, it's more out of fear because, you know, lay people that don't deal with legal work, deal with the law frequently, can get, it's kind of a false confidence associated with certain legal concepts. And let me explain. So I kind of look at verbal agreements, so-called, in much the same way I look at what's called common law marriage. You'll often see folks that are not, you know, in the legal profession, again, lay people, they'll talk about common law marriage as if it's completely akin to just marriage, to marriage. And really the answer to both questions, in my opinion, with regard to verbal agreements, is there a verbal agreement? Is there a common law marriage? Yeah, if the court says so. So in the common law marriage context, which doesn't exist in Thai law, but the common law marriage notion is, yeah, a court can create a common law marriage. Oftentimes they were created constructively created, if you will. So a common law marriage came into existence constructively in order for the courts to grant a divorce. That was where you often, at least in the reading of jurisprudence that I went through when I went through law school, you often saw a common law marriage only come into being because a divorce needed to occur. And this usually was the case where, you know, one party to the common law marriage would essentially abandon the other party, and the other party would bring it to court to try and get a common law marriage declared so that they could then divorce and thereby gain some property, gain some, you know, compensation from the marital estate, basically. And the point I'm trying to get at with so-called verbal agreements is, much like common law marriage, you'll see folks go around and sort of say, well, I'm common law married. Well, not until a court says you are, you're not. You aren't until you are. And it's sort of like saying, well, we got a verbal agreement. Yes, you do. Okay, and that may be usable. In fact, oftentimes it can be usable in court. But the provisions of that agreement, if they're not written down, one of the big problems you're going to have is, at the end of the day, the court's probably going to write them down for you. And that's even the case here in the Thai system, where they use an inquisitorial process to ascertain, well, to make findings of fact and conclusions of law. So the thing to take away from this video is verbal agreements can be very useful in Thailand. I've seen them operate very well as a practical matter. But that said, folks out there who are going to view those as, you know, just as akin to a written agreement, they're really not. A written agreement is a substantially different thing. So understand what you're dealing with when you're talking about a verbal agreement versus a written agreement.